a common theme for any discussion of 32 to 64-bit era games, the fifth video game console generation, which covers the period from 1994 to about the millennium, is the difficulty many people had transitioning to a three-dimensional game design. The last few console generations had been dominated by action platformers. However, the innovation of PC gaming market, with landmark titles such as Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, and then Quake, had been clear trendsetters and launched an indomitable movement towards polygonal graphics. Within 10 years, first-person shooters would become the dominant genre of modern video games. However, there was a sense in 1996 that console games could not do them justice. That to really get your money's worth in a shooting game, you needed a mouse and keyboard for accurate aiming. And it's a view I definitely subscribed to at the time. And though GoldenEye, then Time Splitters and Halo, demonstrably proved the way for console domination, with Call of Duty and the like rising to the top of the video game pile from 2006 onwards, that was still 3 console generations away though. And in 1996, the game that convinced me that 3 dimensions really did have something to offer outside of the first-person shooter, the series that opened my eyes and turned me into a convert, was none other than Core Design's Tomb Raider. Available both on PC and consoles, the game felt equally at home being played with a keyboard or an analog gamepad. People may scoff now that Lara Croft inhabited a blocky world, but given the limited graphical capabilities of the consoles at the time, this was an extremely important innovation. By constructing vast arenas out of blocks, this was the most immersive adventure experience available at the time. By implementing advanced for the time lighting techniques and complex geometries out of these simple blocky components, vast, complex and intricate level maps could be quickly developed and then traversed. Decades later, the runaway success of Minecraft alone shows the benefits of this approach. A single block is a graphical eyesore, but by combining enough of them in unique and novel combinations, new worlds can be realised digitally. No video game series in history has ever made me really look around the space I occupy and really appreciate and intuit the raw design of a world better than the original Tomb Raider series. And whilst the landscaping was primitive, Lara's animation was not. Lara became the most fully realised polygonal video game character for the time, which was important because she was front and centre on the screen at all times. Toby Gard's character was designed to be eye-catching from the start, and though her proportions were not exactly realistic, this original iteration of Lara was far from the sensual icon that she would later be remarketed into. Here, in her first outing, the highlighted proportions are there to clearly show her movements and actions clearly. Her long legs are designed to allow her to propel herself around the stage with ease. The design is a masterpiece, hinting at female sensuality without ever becoming overindulgent. That design philosophy would not last, however, and Toby Gard left Core Design before the sequel even entered production when he saw what the marketing team was getting up to. There are 2 modes to Lara's character, travel and combat. With a simple tap of a button, she switches between holstering or drawing her weapons on command. Combat is a little simple in this first outing. There are less than half a dozen weapons to choose between, and for the majority of the game you're clearing away just the local wildlife that has infested the tombs. The majority of these pose little threat from a distance, as Lara can simply climb up to the high ground and wail on the enemies with the pistols that boast unlimited ammo. Saving precious ammo of the more powerful guns for late game enemies is recommended, as they have a much higher chance of ambushing you, leaping around corners to catch you by surprise or backing you into a corner. With guns drawn, Lara is still light on her feet, able to outpace most enemies, and she can leap or tumble around them to avoid damage. However, once the guns are holstered, Lara transforms into some form of ballerina. This was developed long before the dual sticks became a normal control mode, so Lara is controlled via a digital input. and this suits the Blocky world design because it means it is always easy to predict her movement no matter what the situation is. One button tap down will send her back the same distance every time. When jumping either from a stationary or a running start, she will travel exactly 1 or 2 blocks forwards and 1 block upwards. If the action button is held, she can latch onto the edges and then haul herself around. The design scheme was inspired, and it allowed for incredibly complicated level designs to suit her athletic prowess. Particularly the water sections that, unlike traditional 2D platformers, are actually some of the highlights of this game. In terms of difficulty, it's safe to say that you will die a lot, and the game's maybe 15-hour campaign is certainly a challenge. Throughout each of the 4 areas you are constantly descending deeper and deeper into the earth, and if there is one thing that Tomb Raider excels at, it's that sense of foreboding isolation. The dread that something terrible is waiting just around the next corner, that no one can come and help you, that you are alone down here. However, I would say it's more intimidating than it is actually difficult. It demands constant attention and a very consistent approach if you're going to succeed, but dying, retrying, dying again, assessing the situation and then finally succeeding is all part of the gameplay loop. When people say that Dark Souls and the following genre that emerged in its wake harken back to old school game design, they're thinking of titles like this one. The only oil in the works, from a modern perspective, are the reliance on tank controls. Core Design was one of several studios to settle on this solution to the 3-dimensional game design problem, and it's one of the most famous examples. The other comparable developer being Capcom's Resident Evil franchise. Resident Evil and Tomb Raider launched 6 months apart, and they both used a design scheme that prioritised the forward button moving the character directly in front of them, backwards sending them into reverse, and then left and right being used to turn, like a tank. However, Resident Evil also prioritised a fixed camera design, allowing for more detailed world design, but limiting the space into tight and narrow corridors. Tomb Raider's camera is free-floating, remaining behind Lara as much as possible, and although it does have occasional erratic moments, this is a joy to watch. Tank controls are often derided now, but I would not have these first few games any other way. They suit the level design and control scheme perfectly. Tomb Raider featured Lara navigating through 4 tombs scattered across the globe. The story is given via a very light touch, with only a few small cutscenes to flesh out the narrative, but it is excellently handled. Each level flows naturally into the next as Lara probes deeper down towards the bottom of the tomb. The abandoned monastery, St. Francis Folly, is built atop an ancient Colosseum. Beneath the Colosseum, Lara uncovers Midas's palace, relics from an ancient time that hint to the supernatural power of the legendary king. Falling down a pit inside the palace, Lara literally falls into the ancient cisterns, the sewer built by these ancient kings. And by navigating through the cisterns, she uncovers the final resting place of Tihocan, one of 3 Atlantean rulers who possess the artifact that she's hunting. Throughout this set of 5 levels, you occasionally bump into Pierre, who is also hunting for the scion. Occasionally you'll find him searching the ruins, and occasionally he ambushes you. Either way, it feels like a race to the bottom, and although Pierre beats you to the prize, one final shootout provides Lara her treasure. This game was such a revelation at the time. It was effortlessly cool, totally immersive, and a joy to both watch and play. The music heightens the tension throughout, a largely ambient soundtrack that makes you feel lost and isolated, miles away from civilization, desperately searching for a way to progress. I'm not surprised Lara became a phenomenon after this game. Game design had never before allowed players to so totally inhabit their avatar in this digital world.